Hello folks, been a minute, but Forward 1862 here. I'm back with a video that's honestly really just to show y'all some of the tips and tricks and little things that you can do inside your settings and some things that you can look for when you're playing ESO that honestly what happens is that veteran players forget these things exist and forget that everybody ever told them. So a lot of the time they're never mentioned, and they are really useful things that turn out to be helpful down the road. So that being said, let's just go ahead and dive right on into it. So if you look at my bottom bars, you'll notice that I always have my ability bar up, I have my health, stam, and mag bars up, my potion bar up, and then that thing right above it is my buff bar. We're going to pop another food because I'm running out. Now, going from left to right, you're going to see Minor Slayer, Savagery, Prophecy. Savagery boosts my weapon critical, and Prophecy is boosting my crit rating. Then you're going to see the Mundus Stone. That's telling me that I have a Mundus Stone active. Then you're going to see 2 hours on food. So, to see a more detailed layout of that, you're going to go in here, and this is boosting Rebel critical. And then Prophecy is also boosting my critical rating. Both of those are coming off of the square button down there, which is Camouflage Hunter, which literally just sits there to give me those buffs. Because if you bar swap, you'll notice that they change, and I have minor buffs: Fortitude, Intellect, and Endurance. These are coming from the triangle skill, which is really nice. Now, another thing you'll notice is whenever somebody somewhere will probably mention these things called timers. What are those? Well, notice 11 seconds, 17, 20 seconds, 15, bar swap. You have little bars on the top to show you what your back bar timers are at. Why is that useful? You bar swap back when it gets low, and then you know what you need to reproc when the timer is running low on it. And I was waiting for that to happen because I figured I might end up in a situation where I buffed that precursor, or I left too much damage on that precursor. So let's just go ahead and burn him back away. Another thing that I wanted to point out is as you proc abilities, you're going to get other abilities popping up on that bottom bar. So you see that little countdown for 6 seconds? That is Minor Sorcery, increasing spell damage by 10%. One of the advantages to running a Templar. So certain skills pop Minor Sorcery, which is why whenever you're looking at builds and why things work, you always need to be looking at your weapon passives. Well, actually your skill passives. Because that particular buff that boosts your spell damage by 10% is coming from here. Illuminate in the Dawn's Wrath skill line. Well, how do you get those numbers? Well, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to scroll down to Options. You're going to want to go to Combat, and you're going to want to go to your ability bars. Always show, because your options are don't show, automatic, always show. I always show them. Some people prefer automatic so that it just pop up when in combat. I just like running around with them always on. That way I know, because particularly in dungeons or trials, if you are running around and you're just waiting for them to pop up, you don't know what pre-buffs you have running, you don't know what's being thrown on you, you don't know what buffs you have. Ability bar timers on. Ability bar back row displays timers for your inactive ability bar. So this means that this is basically so that way when you drop, for example, Wall of Elements, you got your ability timer, but you need bar swap off, and there's a little line above the R1 button that's ticking down. That's how you know how much time you have left on that ability. Remember, folks, we're on console, we're not on PC, so we have to use every trick we can get. Attribute bars, this is mag, stam. I always show them. I prefer number and percent. Some people prefer none. Some people prefer number only. Some people prefer this percent only. I really prefer both. I definitely go with either number, percent, or number and percent. One of those three. Active combat tips, you might want to throw them on. They are useful sometimes. That's really up to you. Ultimate number. This one is another useful thing. So if you look at my ability bar down at the bottom, you're going to see my ultimate. I have 261 ultimate right now, 261 ultimate here. I personally like to always have that number showing rather than just the little square that ticks up, 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 up. The reason why is I, for the most part, remember how much ultimate these skills cost. But if you don't, you can always go here, 119. Well, instead of having a bar ticking up, so that way you can only see kind of where you're at before you can cash your next ultimate. If you have 110 ultimate, you know you only need 9 more ultimate to pop your ability. And I cast Barb Trap by accident. Well, these things happen. Combat text. This is your damage text. So, for example, this is your text where I'm stabbing, and you can see the orange numbers, the yellow numbers, and the white numbers. That's your outgoing damage. This tells you exactly how much you're doing. So you want it on, you want your outgoing damage, you want outgoing on, outgoing damage on, your damage over time, and you also want your outgoing healing if you're a healer on. And really, if you're a DPS too, it's nice to know if you're throwing out any heals other than yourself. I would just throw all of this on, to be perfectly honest. You definitely want to know what your incoming damage is, and that's literally what it sounds like. It's going to pop up like a little red number on the side of your character, and you're going to have incoming damage, incoming dot or damage over time. You're going to have incoming healing. That's just nice to know in case you get hit with a really nice heal. Incoming crowd control. I generally don't run that, but you can. But I mean, you can really and truly. I know a lot of people who just turn all of this stuff on because it's really nice to know. Overhealing. You don't actually need to know if you're being overhealed, but there are certain sets in the game that will show you overheal, or that do something when you overheal a target. For example, Prayer Shawl will proc a shield if you overheal a target as a healer. Now, then let's talk about buffs. So, buffs are those things at the top above your health bar. And if you look inside combat, you're going to have your options of don't show, automatic, always show. I, again, always go with always show because I just like to know what I have going on my character. So you want buffs on, you want self buffs on, and you also want to know what debuffs you're running. So that will be, because here's the thing, that bar that's above your health is anything that is affecting you and your character. Now, let's look at the precursor for a minute. If you look towards the top, you will see the health of the precursor. Now, I'm going to throw Barb Trap down. Now, you see that little blue thing at the top? Every one of those things I've hit that precursor with is a status effect. Now, what does that mean? Well, some of those things are status effect, but everything I'm hitting this precursor with is a debuff or a status effect. Right now, that skull tells me it's got the... Right now, I've procced burning. I've procced 4 different things. And that little blue thing up there, you see the 10 stacked on it. That is your Reliquin stack. So for those who want to know, how do I know where my Reliquin stacks are? That's how. It's always going to be on the target, just below the health bar, where their debuffs are, or their affected statuses. So, as you can see, as I hit with my light attack, since I'm rolling Welkin, it ticks up. Anything in the game that says if you have X number of stacks this happens, you're going to see it applying either on an enemy in that top bar or on yourself in your bottom buff bar. It feels like it's a lot to look at. Once you get used to it, it's a lot less than you think. Because a lot of the stuff you're applying, you're not really thinking about at the time. There's only like really and truly one or two things. So you want target debuffs on. I generally don't worry about what others throw on a target. I show all my effects, and I show effects with infinite duration. These two, I'd keep this one. If you want to take this one off, it's not really going to change anything. All these just things that I picked up over time. And now to one of the best kept secrets, in my opinion, about ESO. That's really not supposed to be a secret. It just kind of happens by accident. Go to Options, Gameplay, scroll down till you hit Combat. Custom colors. So, when you are fighting, a lot of people don't realize this, but you can have a friendly AoE color. And mine looks like this. It's really nice, it's really bright, it's really green. Why do I like that? Because I like to know where to stand if the healer's throwing out heals, because that's mainly when you're going to see it. Now, to change that, you need to put custom colors on friendly color and then friendly brightness, because I haven't changed the friendly color, but if you look at my character now, you're going to see that's what a good game starts with. It's very low brightness. You can very much see through it, and yes, it's relatively easy to see, but crank this up and that's a lot easier to see. But the real one that matters is enemy color. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you start with something along these lines. Maybe a little bit brighter. No, it's actually about that bright. You can barely see that red AoE under your feet, right? So what I do, and many other people do, is we choose a color that is super bright, and then we crank that enemy brightness all the way up. So now I know anytime I see pink in the game, I get out of it, because there are very few things in ESO that are bright pink. You're going to be fighting on some floors that are actually red, which makes it a lot harder to see AoEs. Doing this will allow you to see AoEs a lot easier, and you can roll dodge and move out of them very quickly. Now, next thing we're going to talk about is quick casting ground abilities. You want this on, and here's why. I'm going to turn it off for a second. Then we're going to go up here. We're going to go to skills, bar swap. Grab this, and we're going to throw on Blazing Spear. Okay, so you want to throw a Blazing Spear at an enemy as a DPS, or you want to throw it at the tank as a healer to give them resources. So you hit triangle, right? No, you have to hit triangle twice, because you have to tell it to cast there. And it will cast wherever you're pointing. Don't get me wrong. But here's the thing. It takes you an extra second to get that cast off, and then it can really screw up your rotation and you not realize it. So how do you fix that problem? Options, gameplay, combat, quick casting ground abilities on, and then when you want to throw it, it just auto activates. And that's for any skill that you get that first initial circle, and then it just drops. So like Ritual of Retribution, which I'll proc over the top of this. Obviously, you don't have that because you're not throwing it. But Lightning Flood on a Mag Sork. This skill on a Magplar. The ranged version of Barb Trap. There are so many skills in the game that are distance oriented that you're throwing, that having that quick cast ground ability where you don't have to double proc the button makes it a lot easier to go through your rotation. Makes it a lot faster, simpler, and easier. Now, this is one of those things that's just kind of a quality of life thing. You don't have to do it. It's just, I really like it. Consolidate area loot. So what does that mean? Okay, you kill 10 enemies around you. It puts all their loot together, so that way when you loot one enemy, you're looting all of the enemies. The other thing I like to do, and this is for me personally, is auto loot. Because I don't want to have to go through when I kill an enemy and just search through every single little thing on an enemy. I just want to go up there, hit X, loot everything off of it, call it a day. Now, I also have ESO Plus, so for me, looting all that crap really isn't a big deal, because at the end of a dungeon, I'll just pull out my banker or healer, or not banker or healer, but banker and merchant, talk to the merchant, sell whatever I need to sell. Oh yeah, by the way, you do have a buyback tab in the merchant that takes a minute for stuff to disappear, and buy and just sell my stuff. Then I'll slide over here to the banker, and I'll drop stuff inside the bank. And it makes looting fairly quick and fairly easy. If you don't have ESO Plus, maybe you don't want to do that because things don't go automatically into your craft bag. But it is one of those things that for me I've found really nice. Again, I don't do that with auto looting stolen items, and having loot history is nice, just because it pops up in the bottom left hand corner of your screen listing all the stuff you picked up. Tutorials are useful. Default soul gems, so yeah, honestly, if you're running dungeons, you're never going to run out of soul gems. You're just not. You're going to get random crown purchase, but for Christ's sake, don't go buy crown soul gems. Go to a guild trader in like Deshawn, or not, well, Mournhold in Deshawn, and just buy some from a guild trader. You do not need to spend real world money on soul gems. Now, I'm going to make an honorable mention of this, but for more information, look into my light attack weaving video. And that is, well, light attack weaving. What is light attack weaving? Light attack weaving is this. Instead of just spamming an ability, right now I'm just spamming jabs. What you want to do, and I'm going to do this so that way you can see that there's a DPS difference, but if you want a further explanation, look at my light attack weaving build. Okay, just straight up spamming jabs, we hit 20,000. Light attack weaving is where you hit a light attack in between each ability cast. So, light attack, stab. 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 And you hit a whole lot higher when you're light attacking between each ability. At this point in the game, light attack weaving is becoming well known for the most part, but it's still not as well known as it should be, so I always like to mention it. Particularly because a lot of the stuff in the game builds off of light attacks. When you deal crit damage with a light or heavy attack, that'll unprocs off light and heavy attacks, but it's specifically crit damage on them. Reliquin Jack, your light and heavy attacks stack up to 10 times, and ultimately you'll be dealing about 3,000 damage every second with just that. And there are a bunch of other sets in the game that stack up off light attacks. Again, I'm not going to go into a full explanation here. If you want that, go check out my light attack weaving video. Now, I'm going to talk the next thing about food. So let's go to inventory. Let's go to sortables. To assign something, you would just hit square and then, drop it on your quick slot bar wherever you want it. Which leads me to another thing that I'll get to in a second. So, depending on, just in general, every character you build, you're never going to run it without food. The reason why you're never going to run it without food is because food is just one of those things that once you start playing an ESO, you're just going to live with it. Like, you're going to live with food on you at all times. Depending on what you're doing, you want different foods for different situations. Ghastly Eyeball is a great Magicka parse food. What do I mean by that? Ghastly is great for fighting this guy, because you don't have to worry about sustain, you just have to worry about hitting your abilities. It's really useful. But Witchmother's Potent Brew is a very, 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 very popular option for pretty much all content. And that's because it's boosting your magic and your health. Yes, you don't get as much boost for magic or magic recovery as you do with Ghastly, but you get 3,000 extra health, and your healers are going to be very happy about that. This stuff you can buy in Guild Traders, or you can buy the recipes in Guild Traders and make it yourself, but you have the ingredients. Your potions, obviously, are down here. Again, slot those and pick your slits or quick slot. Again, you can buy, these are trash pots, you can pick them up off of any boss. You have Essence of Mag, Essence of Health, and Essence of Stam. You can pick those up off of any boss randomly. Essence of Spell Power, these are ones you have to make. You also have Essence of Weapon Power, and you do have an Essence of Health. That's a Tri-Stat potion. Those are your three biggies. There are some more niche potions that will boost ultimate regen and things of that nature, but unless if it's not Essence of Magicka, Essence of Stam, or Essence of Health solo stat, then you're going to be picking anything like this up in Guild Traders, or honestly going online and finding the recipe for it and making it yourself. Although, keep in mind, those potions do start to get expensive after a while. Now, let's have a look at something here, because we're going to scroll up to attributes. A lot of times people don't realize this, but just as a general rule, for magic DPS, if you're a magic DPS, you're going to dump all your attribute points in mag. If you're a stamina DPS, dump them all in stam. If you are a tank, distribute them as needed to get you to somewhere between 40 and 50,000 health. And which leads us to looking at the stats. Now, a lot of stats. You can hit square, by the way, and view exactly what a stat does, and it gives you a nice little explanation. If you ever want to get into making your own builds, there's a lot that goes into theory crafting, but one thing I will tell you is you want to have around 30,000 of your main resource, whatever it is. You want your spell damage or weapon damage to be around 5,000, and you want your crit to be at least around 55% or higher. Yeah, as far as resistances go, for PvE, that doesn't matter. For PvP, PvP right now is a little bit on the crazy side, because you have people running insane amounts of resistances, and you have to have a lot of burst damage to kill them. But with PvE, resistances on anything except a tank don't really matter that much. For those that are interested, your resistances across the board cap out at 33,000. Just so you know. Your resistances, by the way, are how much damage you decrease that's incoming. Now, let's have a look down here at advanced stats. This is where you're going to see your bash cost, break free, sprint, block, sprint cost, block mitigation, sneak speed, frost resist, all this lovely stuff. But the main one I want to talk about is crit damage. Because you're going to look at your build. If you go inside your build and you look at your build, and it might say 0% crit damage or 5% crit damage, and you're like, wait, I thought that does like 50%. Well, why is it only saying 5%? The game is not calculating the base. Well, the game, when it does this, is not talking about the base 50. You will never drop below 50% increased damage. So this character actually has a 70% crit damage boost, because what is happening here is that it's 20% added to the base 50% for a total of 70%. Another thing to note that they snuck in a while back, that they didn't make a huge deal about, because for the most part it doesn't affect everybody, but it affects some people. You're looking at a maximum of 125% crit. Once you hit 125% crit, so that would be 75% crit damage in this advanced stats menu. Anything over that, you're wasting crit damage. If you're not hitting, 100, you're not really going to hit 125 out of a couple group settings. You're going to hit high. You can get it up to like 110, 115, but anything above that, you can do it, but outside of a group setting or a DPS test, there's not really much reason to stress about that too much. Just something to keep in mind, because crit rating, crit damage, they are all very important. Oh, for the record, just so everybody knows, 216 is the amount, well, 216 to 219, that is the amount of crit rating that equals 1%. So, what does that mean? Let's go inside here. 657 critical chance. Okay, well, what does that mean? What that means is, it'll let me open this up. 657 divided by 216 gives you 3%. So that's 3% there, 3% there. That's what your critical rating is. Alright. And one last thing I want to talk about is, always hang on to pieces that you don't have unless you're not planning to get rid of them. And here's what I mean by this. So, a while back, so in ESO, it used to be that you did not ever build, like you just could, like the pieces you got, like this piece that's in Divine, you can see it has a little reconstructed symbol for Divine. Same thing here, 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 here. But like, let's look at the Deadly Rings. These have the transmute symbol for Bloodthirsty. In ESO, before the Somerset update, it used to be that there was no way to change traits on jewelry. And before the Clockwork update, there was no way to change traits, period. Clockwork City introduced transmute stations, and Somerset introduced jewelry crafting, although the mats for jewelry is still obscenely high. But with this, what you are looking at is, something that most is relatively common knowledge now. But the thing that you need to know about it is that the set items book, it is a wonderful tool. I'm not going to say most people know about it. I'm throwing it in here as, one last thing, just because it's really good to know. So, for example, let's say that you are wanting to farm Medusa from Arcs. Okay, well you need to know what piece you're missing. You go into set items, dungeons, and then you go to Arcs and scroll down And there's your Medusa set. Or maybe you were farming Lamia. Well, you've got 3 pieces you're missing. Why does that matter? Look at the name and look at the cost. Lamia's song costs you 32 to reconstruct. You do that at a transmute station. Medusa costs you 25, so it costs you half as much to reconstruct Medusa as it does to transmute it. Why does that matter? Because what ends up happening is that you end up, if you're constantly transmuting everything, it takes a lot of transmutes. If you're reconstructing something, it takes half as many. If you have everything in that item set, it will drop it down to a cost of 25. Also, you don't have to farm mythics more than once, guys. Just go to antiquities, scroll down, and like Gaze of Sithis, cost 25. Malakath, cost 25. Once you get a antiquity, it's there forever. And it just costs you 25 transmutes to make it. Bear in mind, though, that once you make a antiquity, you cannot deconstruct it. You can only destroy it, to my knowledge. So that's something to bear in mind. But with any other items, so when you deconstruct them, you get 25 transmute crystals back. So, for example, if I were to, for some reason, decide to take off all the reliquin I have on this character, I'd get back 25 transmutes per piece of reliquin. Is that less than I spent reconstructing it? Yeah. Is it better than nothing? Yeah. That's only true for reconstructed pieces. That is not true for transmuted. If you transmute something, you might as well hold on to it forever because you're never getting those transmutes back. If you reconstruct it and it costs you 30, well, you can decon that piece and get 25 back. Okay, you just lost 5, but, you know, better than holding on to a piece you don't need. But if you transmute it, just hold on to it for the rest of the time. Because otherwise you're never gonna get anything back if you destroy it. One last thing I want to mention. Well, 2. 1, the new marker system that's in the game. Press right on the D-pad, and then you get all these lovely markers that you can select. Just aim it at a target, throw it up, and boom, you have a nice mark that appears on your map. And at first I thought this was kind of like a gimmicky thing, like, oh, hey, you got markers in the game now. Woohoo. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, it actually is really useful. In trials, you'll a lot of the times see tanks and healers mark themselves. It's really good for marking bosses that move or split and you don't know which boss is the real one. This marker system is exceptionally useful for that. And they also redid the menus. So you have a quick slot menu now, you have an allies menu, a mementos menu, a tools menu, an emotes menu. Place a little bit of Ragnar the Red for you. Honestly, I don't even know why I always go to that one, but this is, if you ever see me in game standing around, chances are if I'm not doing anything, I'm playing Ragnar the Red. And you get to that by hitting right trigger, or you can hit left trigger. Either way, you now have 5 bars to slot things. And your quick slot bar is where you put other random things. So let's say I want to call Bastion out. Okay, I can't use that collectible inside of a house. Okay, well, let's say I want to turn into a Spriggan. Boom, Spriggan. And let's say I want to no longer be a Spriggan. Okay, well, no longer a Spriggan. Quick slot potions, food, my banker, my merchant. If you're going to be playing ESO over an extended amount of time and you got the money to do it, spend the gold to buy a banker and a merchant. The rag picker is honestly not necessary. You can just shove all that stuff in your bank, grab your crafter, go back to it at a later date. But you definitely want to grab the banker and merchant whenever you can, because they will clear out your inventory and prevent you from having to, you know, go to other places constantly or anything like that. And that's just a general list of tips and tricks. I hope you found something that was useful. And remember, this is stuff for new players, veteran players, players just across the board. These are just things that I've discovered in the game that make the game experience either easier, increase my damage with small tricks like knowing what my buffs are and looking at my timers, or maybe it's just a quality of life improvement like being able to mark your bloody target and not having to rely on a weapon skill that you pray is sitting there and doesn't go away. These marks just never go away. Did not believe how useful they would be. They are in fact incredibly useful. Hopefully you found something that you will find useful. If you did, thanks. Like and subscribe. I'm at 37 and I'm trying to get to don't really know how much by the end of the month, but however high I go is however high I go. But anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. If you ever have any questions, feel free to find me in game. Later, guys.